My name is Jim Waldo. I'm a professor of the practice at the Harvard School of Engineering and Applied Sciences, and I also teach technology policy at the Harvard Kennedy School. The biggest challenge over the next 5 years on the interface between data and policy is actually getting the two groups who are working in this to understand each other. Policymakers tend to not understand the technology very well. Technologists certainly don't understand how policy is formed. And the two of them work at very different speeds. Technology tends to change in matters of weeks or months. Policy is formed over much longer periods of time. So the technologists tend to think that the policymakers are irrelevant, and the policymakers tend to think that the technologists are arrogant and don't listen to them. I think they're both right, and there needs to be some way of translating between the two so that the policymakers can build policy in a more rapid pace that is informed by technology, and the technologists can take policy implications into the designs of the technology that they build. The question of whether you can actually do science on data that is obtained on human beings and maintain the privacy of those human beings is a very complicated question. Right now, there are laws in various places, both the EU and the United States, that state the requirements of anonymity that need to be maintained if you are going to share the data sets that you build as you are gathering these large social science data. But in de-identifying these sets, you often introduce large statistical variation so that the conclusions that you draw when you do an analysis on the de-identified set is very different than the conclusion that you would draw if you used the original set. In fact, the conclusions that you might draw using the de-identified set are, to use a technical term, wrong. So work needs to be done on both understanding how you can accurately de-identify a set and minimize the bias that is introduced into it. Well, thinking that there might be some cognitive dissonance between notions of privacy and the use of social media is really overstating the definition of cognitive dissonance. It is far more ironic and far more bizarre than that. So we're now at a point where technology has allowed information to be shared in ways that we really don't have any intuitions about. So notions of what is private and what is public are changing on an almost hourly basis. And the laws and the policies behind this notion are lagging sometimes 3 and 4 years behind the practice. So this is another case where the technology is so far outstripping the implications of the technology and the ability of the policymakers to understand the technology that we don't even have a clear definition. The courts are well behind both the policymakers and the technologists in being able to interpret what the right notion of privacy is. And people's notion, the reasonable expectation of privacy is really not in any kind of coherent connection to the way that technology is actually used. So conferences like the Data Policy Conference are vastly important to bring together the policymakers, the legislators, and the technologists so that they can begin to understand the issues that are common between them but are thought about in entirely different ways. The policymakers need to hear what can and can't be done by the technologists. The technologists need to hear what the concerns are of the policymakers. And this is a beginning of that dialogue that really needs to happen between the two camps so that they don't find themselves warring with each other, but instead try to cooperate and move together in all reasonable speed to protect both the subjects of the big data analysis and the ability to use this data to better inform policy and government.